Welcome to another episode of Project Peak Performance. Today, we're reviewing one of our pack members, the legend that is Ian Macbeth. It was my pleasure to co-host that one with Mr. Rob Brady. Rob, we'll get the takeaways in just a minute, but Dave, Alex, first and foremost, coming over to you both. What were your key takeaways? Let's dive straight in.
Wow, mate. Jesus Christ. My key takeaway is that I am sure Ian has been built by Audi or Volkswagen or somebody like that because he is the most German engineered, efficient piece of machinery human being I have ever seen in my life or had the pleasure to be among. Fuck me, mate. Jesus Christ. This guy can hold a diary, can't he? Wow.
It's militant, isn't it? You say German engineering, I was thinking more Toyota,
Yeah, maybe, mate, maybe, yeah. But the biggest thing for me, and it was a real eye opener, to be honest. Probably there was a few attributes that I listened to and I heard about him, and I thought they were brilliant. But the biggest one for me was that diary. Yeah, to keep a structured diary, it's just something I never even thought about, to be honest. I've always had like personal. I keep things quite separate, which is probably what causes me some problems, to be fair, now in hindsight. But to have that diary running from 6 till kind of 10 o'clock every single day with 40% of it fixed and 60% of it lenient and movable based on new stuff was just like a real wow moment for me. God, that seems like a really good thing to do. I'm definitely going to be adopting some of that myself because my dad, I just don't have one, as you guys know. I'm like the most. If I don't do whatever I say I'm going to do on this call, and I tell you I'm going to do it after, I probably won't because I'll forget. But yeah, wow.
At least you're honest.
I'm honest about it. Yeah, of course I am. But yeah, super efficient. And to really summarize it, super efficient. And not only that, I can see where the efficiency comes from because he's very, very clear on what he wants,
Mhm.
which again, I thought was really nice to see. And yeah, I could go on for hours on this, but I'll end up taking it a lot like I normally do. So yeah, what do you think about it, Alex?
I think we've got to we've got to know him quite well, obviously over the last year or few months, and it's trying to weigh up for those listening to him for the first time what would be a wow moment for them because it feels like we get one of those sort of every week.
Yeah.
And what secondly is what I learned new from the episode as well. So from my perspective, I operate off a compass and I rate my life off a compass. From board up in the north, through to my team in the south, through to family and myself personally. So I'll rate that and try and get a well-rounded score to make sure nothing's dropped. But he obviously looks at the sort of holy trinity, doesn't he, with health, wealth, and family. And I think I just love that idea of trying to manage your priorities evenly. Because if something's a 10, then one of the other sides is going to be a 4 because you've given everything to something to get it to that point. So I think that's a really important thing for people to take away is how do you get that balance in your life to mean that you can manage your work priorities, you can manage your family priorities, you can look after yourself.
Hmm.
So that was a key thing that's always shone through from what Ian talks about. I think from a really new thing that I learned from the episode that I thought was great was the work that he did with an action coach about quantifying the value of jobs that he involves himself in. So how much is that task actually worth in sort of tangible pound notes? Because ultimately that's helped him then prioritize his diary and know what is worth his time. That was a massive golden nugget for me from that episode.
Mm. Yeah, I must admit that's something that I've been aware of for a little while, but the way he contextualizes it and actually brings it to life in his business, because obviously it's quite clear from what we know of Ian as a character, he likes to put his finger on the pulse, and that could then potentially be conveyed as someone that needs to, I guess, to all intents and purposes, want to control what's going on around him all the time. But actually, I look at it as £10 tasks, £100 tasks, £1,000, and then £10,000 tasks. And I suppose what he's been able to do is be quite comfortable with the idea of then, because I questioned it on the episode, how have you got to a position where you've been comfortable with the idea of delegating those 10 and £100 tasks and just being completely comfortable with almost stepping away from them? And it's, I suppose, ingrained in him. It was from a very early age, and that's the thing that German engineering, as you referred to it as, Dave, hasn't always been there, though, has it?
No.
Rob questioned him on it. Have you always been like this? And the reality is no.
No, it's not. it's really interesting. One of the reasons why it was so kind of prominent for me is it really highlighted, obviously you're privy to what my background was and I believe that probably maybe even 5 years ago, my life was completely off balance. So it was heavily targeted towards one direction. And to be quite honest, back in the day, I didn't even think that much about the wife and kids. I really didn't. I kind of maybe had this feeling that everything would be all right in the background, but my focus was so much on other areas of my life, predominantly business and growth and this, that, and the other, that it actually did cause me a huge issue in the background. So when Ian highlights what's really important to him, I think I'd have taken a hell of a lot, because it was always very important to me, my family and children, everything else, but it wasn't, strangely enough, something that I put into my diary or my plan. So it was kind of, and I could see this being very similar for a lot of business owners. It was kind of like, well, my time with the family is when I've got time left. Because right now this is uber important, and I bang on about balance all the time. And I think Ian's got what certainly appears to be an amazing balance to life, because he's so focused and strict on his balance of being these three things. Look, it's not business, it's wealth. Business is currently targeting that, health and family. Sorry, what you say, mate?
Oh, you mentioned about balance. Do you guys feel that in life, and certainly career perspective, people have to earn the right to balance and ultimately get themselves to a point where they've worked hard enough to be in a position where they can create that balance? Or do you think you can be rigid enough? Let's say a 21-year-old, 22-year-old got a girlfriend, got their family, they're into their health, like want to sort of keep fit. Do you think do you think that's possible when you're on that sort of climb journey?
I do, if you're very focused and strict. What Ian doesn't talk about, and he hasn't mentioned it, but it's apparent to me, is all of the stuff that he's not doing. And it's his choice of habits. It's his choice of diary. So he clearly shows that if you don't drink and piss around and do a load of other things that are not taking me towards my goal, if you cut them out and just concentrate on what's important to you, then it's physically possible. I mean, he works every single day. He puts the same amount of hours in, even though it's broken up, because he'll kind of go straight through no brew type thing, 10 till 4:30, 5 o'clock. But he does fit it in. And I think it's a real good thing to notice that actually all of these things can be done. But look at what he's not doing. He's not procrastinating a lot. He's not going out drinking and being a dick. He's not doing a lot of the things that I have been guilty of over the years, and I'm sure a lot of other people have. He's very focused on it. He's clear on what he wants and where he wants to go, and puts his energy in. And because he does, I think it shows that where you put energy and nurture, that's where it grows and that's where it flourishes. So to answer your question from my perspective, if you can be as fucking balls deep as Ian and structure your diary and only make things on your diary that are pushing you forward or, enhancing the areas that you want in your life, then yes, it is possible. So to answer your question, it's possible. I just think we need to look closer at what we're actually doing with our time.
I think it's to feed off of that. I watched a podcast or listened to one recently, and it was very much around that whole, it's not what you say yes to, it's very much more focused on what you can say no to. So it then comes back to discipline. Don't get pulled in several different directions, because ultimately your focus then is everywhere, rather than on, like Ian says, everything feeds through this filter of his Holy Trinity. Mm-hmm. So if it doesn't feed one element of that Holy Trinity, it doesn't exist to him.
Yeah.
And that takes extreme discipline.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of talk at the minute on various social media platforms around it's not possible to have work-life balance. We may or may not agree on this topic as a group, and that's healthy. I think it's a complete and utter crock of shit for those people that say you can't have it. It's not possible. I totally believe you can. It just depends on what you want from that balance.
Mm. Yeah. What do you think, Rob, on this? I mean, you speak to a lot of business owners, but also the teams within businesses as well. So you'll get kind of two different outlooks on it. So to kind of answer, let's say, Alex's original question there of the average Joe out there, is it feasible based on the conversations you're having with the team members all the way up to directors? Because I think we're trying to answer the question here for everybody, not just certain aspects and groups of people.
I think the question you've got to ask back to that is like, what is the perception of your own balance?
Yeah.
So like if you want to strive to have the mansions and the Ferraris and that's your view, like what's going to give or what needs to come with that? How much flex does that do? And also the reality of what entails to physically get there, like the disciplines, the no's, the structure, like not doing this and saying yes to this. But that's not for everyone. Like, and I was pretty much in my early 20s. You strive for that element to it, thinking that is going to get you somewhere. Yeah. You start earning the six figures, and all of a sudden, like that didn't lead me to making me more happy. It was actually made me more to the point where I was like looking to end my own life, which is ridiculous. So when you look at the balance now, like I align with Ian with that because I can structure my diary how I do. Like if someone wants to book in with me, it's a month in advance and I have my days and my hours and that's non-negotiable. If someone wants to speak to me on a Monday, it's like, no, that's off, or Friday and these times. And that comes to it. It's non-negotiable hours. And the reason why it's important for that as well is if we don't regimentally structure our diary in that capacity, you can't box your brain into certain things. Your brain's never creative. It's never focused. So it's just like, if it's like, I go to work 9 to 5, it's like, what does that mean? It's like, I just go to work. It's like, you're never focusing on anything. So you're never going to move the dial forward. You just go into that hamster wheel. Your diary, like Ian's structure, where it's like this, and this, it's like focused hours. And actually it allows the brain to actually physically be creative or think more deeper about that topic than it just being something that's, I'm going to think about it today. And it's like, I'm doing this whilst someone's jumping in here and my kid's jumping on me or whatever it might be. So going back to what you originally said, Dave, like from a employee perspective, like realistically, what do you want out of your life and where do you want to go with it? Are you in the right career? Are you happy doing what you're doing? Have you got that balance? And I do believe there should be balance in that, because if you're focusing on too much of one area that affects your mental well-being, your performance levels will reduce. Know that. If you're from a leader's perspective, I think a lot of leaders struggle to pull themselves out of their business. So they do all this, they get to the point I'm a leader, and then they don't actually realize and focus the balance of actually what was I doing this job for? Why did I set up this business? What free of my family? So okay, well, go and fucking do that. Like, you don't have to be in the business for 3 hours. You can focus that out. You just got to actually recognize, going back to what we were saying, like, you're sitting there doing a £5 hour task when you could be at home with your kids, get someone else to do it in your business or outsource it. Don't be an idiot and do that because you're just a slave back to your business.
Yeah.
That's my 5-minute rant. I'll
Totally
shut
right.
up.
That's it. It's an interesting one. And the reason the question came from me like that was, I suppose I sort of do look back at the work that I put in between 21 to 30, and it was grinding. It was, so unsociable hours. It was out and about, pressing the flesh, and, maybe upsetting personal relationships and stuff like that to sort of try and fast track that maybe. And, I felt that was an important part of my career. But then again, I've, in these last few years, I've realized the importance of, if you can diary manage and you can get the right habits in place that are process driven rather than target outcome driven, it probably would have helped and would have made it a lot more possible. So I think at that sort of younger age group, when they are climbing that, they're establishing their name and their career, it's important to note that. And if you can get that in place now, then you'll be laughing.
So there's the synergy with what I resonate with Ian's 3 parts is I go by a thing called a triangle of flow between identity, work, and family. And you can only really focus maybe on 1, maybe 2 at any one capacity. So you have to flow between them. And it's a communication triangle more than anything else. So if you know that the next month's going to be busy at work because you've got to do a deadline project, one's got to give on the other side. So whether that's your family or you, but there also needs to be communication back that once that task is done, you're saying to your work, look, I need to step back from this and I need to invest in my time. I need to invest in me growing, so then I can then get to another level within our work. Or if it's you're still working on yourself and your family are doing, you need to be saying to right, next month's going to be a hell. I'm not going to be around, but this is what I'm doing. These are the reasons why I'm doing this. After this month, I guarantee we're going to be doing X, Y, and Z, and you commit to that.
And that's doing it with clarity and being able to execute on it. Like, you know, I think that people in their, you know, the hours that people work, if they were more productive and planned and knew what they were doing, everything's possible in that time. Ian talks about working 6 hours a day, you know, no more, no less. That's his blocked off time.
Yeah.
The amount of time that is procrastinated on because of not knowing what you're doing. And as you say, Rob, just turning up because it's work time and then working it out on the go. You know, you're really only probably going to be getting at max 40% of that person. So yeah, fascinating discussion. I think the tipping point for him, wasn't it? He admits it was that COVID period where probably he was able to get his head up and just sort of have that time to understand what's important to him, and that changed a lot of his priorities.
He said getting off the tools, wasn't it? I think once he started to see, look, if I can get off the tools and start buying back my time, which is an amazing thing. I mean, I'm all over that, as you know. I'm love setting things up, and my first job is how the fuck can I get myself out of this business as quick as possible? is my initial thought. How can we make it big? How can I get out of it? And I think it's really good. One of the things that it highlighted to me was a thought process, and I'm intrigued to know what you guys think of this. And the words selfishness. Okay, so I have got this feeling, or maybe like a boundary I've created, that based on my upbringing and everything, that if I do too much for myself, it's selfish, and that's a bad thing. But in hindsight, over the last 5 years, what I've actually come to learn is if you don't sort yourself out first, you're absolutely useless to anybody else. So the priority must come to you first to sort yourself out. I looked through Ian's diary, and I don't think it's selfish at all. However, he's very structured on it. He's very structured what time he can spend with people, children, his wife, his this, that, and the other. And because he's organized it in such an efficient way, he is actually ticking these boxes. Maybe there's certain times that he could say, well, maybe I could have done it a bit better there, or whatever else. But on the grand scheme, he is. And one of the things that it highlighted to me in one of the talks that I have with my missus, the glass of wine talk, where you just go deep and start talking about things, was we started to talk about selfishness. And actually, we both came to the conclusion that we've probably got the wrong thought process around what is selfishness. It's a word that gets bounced around a lot and can actually create a lot of boundaries and obstacles and hurdles for people. And it's definitely something with a bit of thought. I've thought, yeah, do you know what? I do make a lot of decisions to help others sometimes, due to the fact that I feel that if I was to actually do what I wanted to do, it could be deemed as selfish and that I'm out of sync or whatever else. What are your guys' thoughts on this? Being business owners, fathers, you know, everything else. How much time do you allocate to yourself?
Do you know, it's an interesting one. I heard this phrase a few months back. I'm built similarly to you, Dave. So it's very much a case of everyone else comes first. I don't know whether that's an upbringing or it's just our personality type. I don't know. And the phrase that I heard that really resonated, and it connects to exactly what you're saying, is to be unapologetically selfish.
Yeah.
And it really landed, because if I look at, you know, I suppose in many ways inspired by Ian's trilogy, there's a couple of other people I know that work the same process. I've looked at it and gone, if I don't look after myself as a priority, a little bit like the analogy I think Ian used on the pod, you know, if the plane's going down, they tell you, put your mask on first before you help anybody else.
Yeah.
And if I don't look after myself, there's two things that are going to happen. I'm not going to show up as the best version of myself. And my life is getting shortened every day that I'm not looking after myself.
Yeah.
And so I then look at the two most important people in my life, which are my two kids. I'm like, I want to be here for as long as I can for you. So I therefore have to, as a priority. This is the unapologetically selfish piece, but equally I'm doing it for somebody else, which is my innate need. I'm looking at the two of them and going, if I don't look after me, then I won't be here for you in the years that you need me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think you have to be selfish to a point to be selfless in other ways. So, you know, for me, I know how important it is to get exercise in during the week to feel better about myself, be able to relay that to family and colleagues. So those 2 personal training sessions that I have, you know, they're paid for, so I have to turn up, and it's all geared around getting better. But I put them in, they're 6 o'clock in the morning, so I leave before everyone's up in the house, and I get back just as they're sort of like having breakfast and stuff. So they haven't missed too much of me. I've done it at a time that kind of works as best as possible, but I'm getting that endorphin hit. I'm keeping in shape, and that's only going to help my mood in and around the house, and ultimately be a good role model for my 2 boys and my little girl as well. And I think it's the same with the golf balls, having that 90 balls a week. It's sort of that headspace time that again will only help the environment around. And in reality, we're talking 2 hours 45, 3 hours maximum a week. That's me, and then everything else around it is for other people a lot of the time.
And I think that comes back to the work-life balance piece. And like, if you think about Ian's, he has 12 hours dedicated in his diary every week to him. Training, running, saunas, so it has to be taken in context. This is why I say that the whole debate that work-life balance isn't an option is a crock of shit, because it has to be down to what is personally suited to the individual. If 3 hours a week works for you, gives you the endorphin hit you need, gives you the balance and the calm that you need, then that's great. If 12 hours is what Ian needs, then he orchestrates his diary accordingly.
But if I was running the distance Ian runs a week, then I'd probably have 20 hours.
Yeah.
I'd need about
You'd only
40
see me for 12 hours a week. The rest of it I'll be recovering.
But I think going back to what like the title of the podcast was about, like ultra disciplined.
Yeah.
It's the disciplines of it, and the scheduling has to take place. That's the bit. Like if you didn't have any of that in place and you get up on a Saturday morning, this is where it comes back to selfishness. You get up on a Saturday morning, you haven't communicated with anyone, and you say, I'm going to go and do this for 3-4 hours, fully knowing that your partner's got the kids and you sort of plan for the day.
Yeah.
That's where the breakdown is. But if you turn around and say, like you've got Alex, like mine is on Sunday mornings, is my mornings to go and do my runs or go to the gym or do whatever I want. At the same time, I balance it back with Kel. Saturdays is her day.
Yeah.
Right. And it's structured in. There's no breakdown on it. I think a lot of people don't do this because they can't be accountable to themselves and they don't want to be disciplined to themselves, and they want to make an excuse of why I can't do this.
Yeah.
So if someone said like you booked in at 10 o'clock, it's like you show up to the play at 10 o'clock, and if you remove all the other stuff out of it, it's only you that's going to turn up, whether you turn up or not. And that's where you're talking about, Dave, change comes always from within.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I talked about even on my TEDx, is like biggest thing to any change has to come internally. No one can help change you. And I think it was, what was it? I listened to this piece the other day, and they were saying that fitness gyms talk about this is the 12-week training program that we help this person lose all this weight and all this stuff. And it's like the program didn't do that. It was the individual. But they were structured on something.
I think Ian used the phrase, you are either disciplined or you are not. And I think that was a sort of good summary of that. It was interesting today. Sort of, there was a guy that in the personal training sort of gym this morning that had been going for 18 months, lost a phenomenal amount of weight. Looks great, like compared to when he started. And it was his last session today. And sort of he was saying his goodbyes and stuff like that. And I sort of didn't know him too well, but said, "Well done, you look fantastic. Like, make sure you keep it up." And like, it's stuff like that where I'm like, okay, that'll be a good test now, because those aren't in the diary. It's all on him now. That self-motivation. Love to see him in 6 months, and hopefully he's gone from strength to strength. But you are either disciplined or you're not. I agree with that.
Yeah. I met Ian before he even had avocados knowing out there, and like his first business. And I remember sitting down with him, and even what he wanted to achieve is what he's achieving now. So he had that razor sharp view on how he wanted to perceive the brand. What I have noticed, because I've had the pleasure of interviewing Ian and a few guests, like as a guest on a couple of shows of mine every year, is that the story's changed. But what I've noticed with him, as he's gone talking about the circumference of peak performance, as he's pushed himself into the boundaries of running and ultra running and doing that, one thing I've noticed in pursuit of going something similar with Ian with running is that going from a marathon to an ultra marathon, like, it's very much structured, very much detailed, very much longer hours, very much focused. You have to go into like your nutrition, your shoes, all that sort of sides of prep. And as I've noticed with Ian going through that process of actually developing into a particular thing, which is running, that's what I feel like has also helped him craft the other sides to his side to it, because he's respected the journey of what actually it needs to take place, not just going, I'm going to go and run an ultra today, and like, I'm not. What have you done before? 5K. It's like, yeah, good luck. And it's no different than someone saying in their business, you know, I want to turn over 2 million quid, and it's like, how much you turning over now? 10 grand. Okay, like, how are you going to get there? No, I'm just going to turn up 9 to 5 and grind for the day. You know what I mean?
Good luck.
And no different than with the family side to it as well. Like, I want a better relationship with my family. Like, okay, how does that look like for now? I was an arsehole for the last 5 years. So there's going to be processes that I'm going to change internally, but I'm going to have to respect the journey that I've got to go on to get there.
Yeah. I tell you what, I'd be intrigued to see where this running thing is going with him, because I think he's always going to need an Everest in front of him.
He's got one though, hasn't he? He said it on the pod.
Badwater.
Badwater, yeah.
Yeah, that's the Goggins one, that, isn't it? You've got to do like 300-mile runs consecutive within a set period of time or something to even consider.
You've got to be able to be able to get in, you've got to do 100 miles, you've got to do an ultra every year for 3 years to be able to qualify to go and do it.
Wow.
And these are the differences, is what Ian was saying, was like, there are 100 miles of you pack your own stuff.
Yeah.
To it, like, you are your own lifeboat.
Mm-hmm.
So you pack yourself up, you prepare for it, you prepare for your fuel, you prepare for what you're looking to do, and you go out and meet whoever you're trying to race against.
Yeah.
And that's the bit that I see the reason why I'm running, is what comes back to it. Like, I think running's a different sport because you are literally going into your head in those. He mentioned on the pod when he said, like, you know, he came back to the thing and there was no one there and he was on his own. Yeah. And he like sorted himself out, a little crying, and went back out there. Like, imagine if you're a business owner going against someone like that in your area. Like, it's a different animal you're talking to.
Yeah. I mean, he spoke about the marathon where he was running with that guy, the tall guy that was just next to him, not out of breath, pretty comfortable. They were talking for a little while. This guy was picking his brain, and then he said, "Oh, you must run marathons." And he said, was it 2 hours?
2.5 or something.
2.5 hours. But the difference was, he said, was that guy went away for the rest and sort of fell asleep for 6 hours, didn't he? And just came back, sprinting back, like prep all over the place. It almost sort of had that switch off moment, whereas Ian had just sort of powered through. And mindset, mentality, those are words you need to use with Ian, because it's all about the mind, isn't it?
Yeah.
I love the Michael Jordan quote. Some people want it to happen, some wish it would happen, and others make it happen. Yeah. And I think that's sort of quite a good summary of Ian and his how he approaches pretty much anything in his life.
I'd love to know the main driving factor. What actually, I would never ever consider running 100 miles. In fact, I get tired driving 100 miles, so it's never fucking happening for me to start running that. But this guy is super dedicated and determined, and not just running, everything that he does. In fact, he just won't do it unless he's going to put in 110%. I reckon he just won't get interested in it.
Did he start thinking, I'm going to run 100 miles, or did he?
No.
Did he hit 5K? And then it was like, 10K sounds good, and it was the climb from the COVID time. So
yeah, he keeps creating himself a new summit.
Yeah. I remember there was two. So there's a redemption element to it, which I've noticed with it. So he had 2 marathons when I first met him. One, he was trying to get under a sub 4, and he came in at something like 4:08. So he was annoyed the fact that he didn't do a sub 4. Following year, he came back to redeem it and ran a sub 4.
Yeah.
And about last year, he went out to run that 100 miles after he'd done 100 before. Too hot, went out too quick, 60 odd miles, everyone sort of dying out there. And then it's, rather than going, that's it, it's like, came back that next day, 2 weeks later, booked onto the next one and was then running it.
Yeah.
Like that's a different mindset mentality on that one, where it's like, if what it's showing is that I'm focused on achieving that, and I know I'm going to achieve it.
Yeah.
And even if I do a little dip, I'm going to go and achieve it. Whereas most people try, they fail, and that's it.
Yeah.
I think it shows that he's always pushing the limit, because there are points where he obviously hasn't quite done it, but it's not going to stop him doing it. So it shows that he's always on that edge of like what's possible, pushing his body, getting out of that comfort zone. So a testament to him on that as well.
See, it makes me look. I kind of look, and I know he's in the process, and he certainly, when we first got together when we were in Birmingham, we spoke about a book that he has, and the book was about not being average. I'm pretty sure it was something along the lines of being average, and I don't know whether Ian thinks that he's an average guy. Because from what my perception is of him, he's completely fucking ultra human and definitely not average or normal.
That was his thing, wasn't it? That was the whole premise, is that, everything
The average
else.
height, average shoe size, average age, 3.2 children, average business. I think he's like, he sees himself as just like an average Joe. And I'm like, mate, you're like fucking G.I. Joe, not an average Joe. What? Yeah.
He's a Chelsea fan though, isn't he? So
You've got to
I
have your
mean,
flaws somewhere.
Average.
he's got to upgrade his team. He needs to get on the sort of top echelons again.
Brilliant. But no.
I love that. No, it was brilliant, mate. Brilliant podcast, start to finish, and what an insight into his life. I've got a crush on Ian. I've got to tell you, what that guy does.
Like the final part I'd say on it is like the fact of like, when you go onto a lot of these podcasts, that person's either like, I've raised a load of money, I've built this, etc. Like Ian, like when you look at it, he is the everyday man, but like the aspirational everyday man. Like, he's got made redundant, has set up a business, has increased his business. That's come from him. Like the running is like come from him, his family. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah.
If you look at it, what he's done is just simplify everything that is meaningful to him. And then he's not lost in the other shit that actually means nothing. That you look back 10 years down the line, you think, why the hell was I doing that?
Yeah.
And that's allowed him to become some superhuman, because it's just focused on razor sharp focus on just particular things that actually are going to get the dial move somewhere.
Yeah.
And he's absolutely nailed the approach of prioritizing what's important in life. And I think the purpose that he spoke through of change the family tree for future generations.
Yeah.
I love like the simplicity of something that's not so like, there's so many ways you can go with it, but ultimately it's a really clear purpose that everything he puts into every day is feeding towards that same purpose. And he's obviously prioritized what is worth most to him in terms of the task on everything is feeding into that cycle. So that definitely made me think, okay, can I simplify what I want to achieve or what my purpose is based off hearing that even more.
Yeah.
He's just completely committed to a long-term goal, isn't he? And I think we live in a society of instant gratification, social media and gaming and all this sort of stuff. And he is very capable, and it's a mindset shift, right? He is very capable of just going, that's my goal, that's where I want to be. So this short-term hit that I'll get from doing the thing, it's not what I want, because that doesn't feed the future goal. And I think if people want to have a little bit more of what Ian's got, it's working on the discipline to kind of go, no, I don't need the instant gratification, because that doesn't feed. Does it feed what I want over there? No, great, I'm not doing it. If it does, great, I'm all in.
Yeah.
And actually, when you boil it back, I say it's that simple, but it really is.
I bet, knowing Ian, and as we all do, and looking at the things that he's doing now and where he's getting his happiness from and his enjoyment and this, that, and the other, I bet very, very little of Ian's life is instant gratification. Very, very little amount of it. Whereas if you look at the average Joe, I bet it's flipped. So I reckon Ian's probably 20% instant gratification and 80% is coming from enjoying the journey that he's actually on, which is a beautiful way to look at life. If you flip that round, I reckon the average Joe spends 80% of the time looking for instant gratification, only 20% time on the cause, which is going to show how can we do all of these things and become this superhuman guy? he's turning the tables on this thing. It's like I said before, it's not what he's doing, it's what he's not doing that is more important sometimes. You know, he's dedicated to what he's done. He knows he wants to run hundreds and hundreds of miles, so he knows he's got to have boots on the ground every single day or every other day or whatever it is. It's planned, it's in there. Time with the kids when he comes home before they sit down, he sits on the end, has his magic coffee in the morning while the kids are having the crumpets or whatever. He's got that time. Gym, personal side, he doesn't even think about business till 10 o'clock. It's not even on his remit. Then 10 o'clock comes, it's right, bang, we're turning it on. We've got to crank it here till 5. Come home, tea, kids, knock them about, pillow fights, MMA, get them all excited. So the wife kicks off at you. You know, like, why the fuck are you doing this to the kids? Then I've got an hour with the missus, Netflix. That's the average day for Ian. What a day. What a day. What an amazing day. It is, like, kind of every day. And to sit back. And I mean, I love a list in the morning. My days go haywire if I don't have a simple list of what I've got to do in the day. And what I found is over time, towards the end of the day, as I'm getting through this list, I start feeling a bit cool about myself that, you know what, I've achieved something today. I've done it. There's a pat on the back. There's a pat on the back. And the way Ian runs his life, it must be very fulfilling every night when you put your head on the pillow. Know that you've pretty much squeezed 100% out of every single day.
Yeah.
Wow. Right home about that. Nuts.
Brilliant episode. And it's almost like there's probably a part 2, a part 3 to dissecting, going deeper into the mindset, deeper into the discipline, where it comes from, more of that side of things, I think, with Ian. And I'm imagining the guests and what have you that are listening to this and watching this will say the same. So we'll have to get that booked in. Great episode though, brilliant episode, loads of valuable content I think that's come out of this review too. So until next time, that is the review.